Hey guys, coming at you today with a video that may be a little lengthy. I have been working with keto baked goods, keto sweeteners, keto flours since 2020. So it has been 3 years and I still get so many questions on keto sweeteners. So this video is going to entail everything I've collected. I've even done some research so that I could explain it better for you guys, all these different sweeteners, because there is so many on the market, and I think a lot of people get confused with the way companies brand things. So there are tons of sweeteners out there, but most of them are erythritol based, which is a sugar alcohol. But erythritol on its own is only 70 to 80% as sweet as sugar. So every erythritol on the market has something else in it to boost up the sweetness so that it can be used as a 1-for-1 with sugar. So there are tons of different brands on the market, and a lot of people get confused. And even I do. When I say monk fruit sweetener in my videos, I still say it, even though it's erythritol monk fruit blend. I just use Lakanto monk fruit erythritol blend for most of my stuff. But now I'm using So Nutritious or So Nourished or so one of those ones. I'll find the bag and I'll put it up here. But it's just a cheaper brand. But it's erythritol and monk fruit. It's always going to be mostly erythritol with a little bit of another sweetener, because most other sweeteners are super sweet and you can't use them by themselves in baked goods because you need this much. Instead of a cup of sugar, you would need 1/8 of a teaspoon of sugar. So monk fruit sweetener is 150 to 200 times sweeter than regular sugar. Stevia is 300 times sweeter than regular sugar. So a lot of times you're going to find different sweeteners. They'll say monk fruit on there, but it's erythritol and monk fruit. Unless you buy pure monk fruit sweetener, which I have, and I do use them for certain things. Like, that's why a lot of companies that make keto sweets, they use a blend of all different sweeteners, a lot of times to cut the cooling effect of erythritol. So there's not much difference in these guys. It's just that they're using another sweetener to kind of make their erythritol a 1-for-1 with sugar. So Swerve, you think it's just erythritol. It's not. It has oligosaccharides in it, which is a carb that has a small number of monosaccharides. XOS. It can reduce blood glucose, most naturally found in plants. I wrote that down because there was no way I was going to remember that. That's what Swerve has in it. It has some kind of another sweetener that's really sweet to make it so that it's a 1-for-1 with sugar. Then there's Sucrin and Sucrin Gold, which has taglitose and glycerin, malt extract, and steviol. So, and glycosides. They're all just a type of monosaccharide, a simple sugar, but it's proven it's low on the glycemic index. And so they add it to the erythritol, which is the main ingredient in sucrin, to make it a 1-for-1 with sugar. Same thing with the Lakanto that says monk fruit. It's erythritol plus a little bit of monk fruit to make it 1-for-1. And there's tons of these sweeteners out there. There's tons of different brands, and they'll market it as monk fruit. But you got to look at the ingredients. If it's just monk fruit sweetener, it's going to be really expensive for a little amount, but you only need a little bit of amount to sweeten certain things. Like, so things that I'll use that stuff for, whipped cream, because you just need a tiny bit to sweeten your whipped cream. I use the stevia in my coffee. You can use monk fruit and stevia in your coffee, the pure stuff, and it will last you a really long time. And I also use it for my buttercreams because you need a lot of powdered sweetener to sweeten butter to make a frosting. So I'll use a lot of powdered monk fruit erythritol blend, which I think has a little bit less cooling effect than Swerve. That's just me. And I'll add powdered stevia to it to sweeten it up so it doesn't just taste like butter, but not adding all of the powdered sweetener that I need to make it a buttercream frosting. So that covers stevia, monk fruit, and erythritol, and the other things that are found in erythritol-based sweeteners. Now we're going to go on to, we're going to touch on sucralose real quick, just because it's 600 times sweeter than sugar. So when you get those little packets, they have maltodextrin in it, which can be fine in moderation for some people. But if you're doing super strict keto or you're using a lot of packets, it can spike your blood sugar. I'm going to show here several times throughout this video the glycemic index chart that I found online. That's kind of, when I first started keto, that's kind of what I went by. And I don't even think I'm probably going to cover all the sweeteners in this video because there are so many out there. It's ridiculous. So I'm covering the top ones for keto. Sucralose is in a lot of things, and it's in there in a small amount because you only need a tiny bit. And if you want to go check out, Serious Keto has several podcasts about sucralose and how much they give to rats to make it, mess up your microbiome and stuff like that. Like, it's insane how much they give them compared to how much we would intake in a day. Like, it's crazy. A lot of the stuff I drink has sucralose in it, including the Keto Chow and my Zip Fizzes. So I tend to drink things with sucralose in it. I don't bake with it because it's really hard to bake with these sweeteners that are super sweet. Because in a recipe, if you have a cup of sugar, what are you going to replace that sugar with? You're just going to put more flour in it, which is going to be more dry. And then you got to put more fat in it, which makes it higher in carbs, higher in calories and fat. I may someday jump into this and try and make some desserts with just stevia or just monk fruit. But as of right now, I don't have any recipes that'll work with just a little bit of those sweeteners. Okay, so that takes care of sucralose, monk fruit, stevia, and all the erythritol blends, except for someone wanted me to test pure cane. That's what it's called, pure cane. They sent me regular, brown, and powdered, and I used them all in a bunch of different ways. So I made my cream cheese Danish, which uses all three sweeteners. And I think my actual Danish came out a little bit softer than normal. I don't know if that has to do with the sweetener or just something I did that day with my recipe, but I thought it was a little bit softer. The rest of the stuff really didn't seem very different. It maybe had the powdered had a tiny bit less cooling effect. So I made the icing that goes on the cream cheese Danish, which tends to be very cooling because it's just powdered sweetener and a little bit of coconut milk. And I made buttercream with it. So it was a little bit less cooling than the powdered monk fruit erythritol blend. It doesn't work when you heat it and cool it. Just like every other erythritol, it crystallized when it cooled. So it's pretty much the same as a monk fruit erythritol or Swerve or anything like that. The only difference I found was that it has a little bit less cooling effect. The thing with this brand is it says it has sugarcane in it. So I was worried it was going to spike my blood sugar. So I have found my Keto Mojo. So I took my blood glucose after 2 hours of eating it, and it was only a 90. Actually, I did it at 1 hour and 2 hours. And I think it was 90 and then 84 or something like that. So that's what I was worried about in this product. And I looked up how they get this sugarcane in there that doesn't affect your blood sugar. So I wrote it down because I knew I would forget it. Through a unique fermentation process of Brazilian sugarcane, it's fermented, sustainably grown yeast and sugarcane syrup to create a target molecule same as the stevia plant. So apparently it doesn't spike your blood sugar. That's what it says. And I did test it. So it didn't spike my blood sugar. So take it how you will, but pure cane was a really good sweetener. And I did like it. The problem is it's really expensive. So take it with what you will. If you want a little bit less cooling effect, it'll work. If you're looking to make caramel or something like that, it's not going to work. Now, along the same lines as that, someone wanted me to test Bocha Sweet. I still feel weird saying it that way. It is my favorite for powdered sweetener, for sure, because it does not have any cooling effect whatsoever. I haven't found any digestive issues with it, which is nice, but it's really expensive and it was really clumpy. One of my subscribers sent me the bags of it because they had a bunch. I think they bought it in bulk, so they didn't need it all or something. It was a long time ago. This year has been crazy, so I'm finally getting to this, but it's been a while since I've been trying to figure things out with these sweeteners. There's only one more test that I want. Well, I did test it in making meringue mushrooms, and they dried out somewhat in the oven. They turned brown, and then I dehydrated them and it worked. But I need to do more testing with meringues in general because I still haven't figured out one that stays nice and doesn't get weepy on you, basically, which most meringues do anyways, but I haven't been able to bake one fully and have it not crystallized mess. So I still got to work on meringues. But I've used Bocha Sweet in buttercreams and they work awesome. It doesn't get wet or anything in the refrigerator. I'll get to that in a minute, why I mentioned that. But I did test it to make sure it didn't do that. And it tastes delicious. It's just the fact that it's really clumpy and really expensive. But I definitely love it best for things that need to be powdered, like my Mexican wedding cake cookies. I use the Bocha Sweet because it's covered in powdered sweetener. So if you do an erythritol, people that aren't keto or don't like that cooling effect, they're not going to eat them. But they're such a good cookie. So I make it and I use Bocha Sweet in order to powder those. And I like using it in frostings, like I said, and just my drizzle on my cream cheese Danish. It's the perfect thing for that too. There's no cooling effect. Now, I did try heating it. That was the last thing I had to do with it in order to test it. Because I did meringues last year and the icing. I didn't do the buttercream and I had to heat it. So I heated it. I only have the powdered. I didn't have the granular. So I put the powdered in a pot with a little bit of water and I cooked it and it wasn't doing anything. So I was like, what is going on? So I saw that it was like kind of steaming, smoking around the edge. And I took my infrared thermometer and read the temperature. It was at like 370 and it wasn't even the slightest bit caramely. Very strange. And I poured it out and I had it in the fridge. It didn't get like thick like a caramel or anything. Like, so I don't know why that is because it's not like allulose, which holds on to moisture and doesn't set. Maybe it is like allulose. I don't know, but it doesn't caramelize, which is so weird. Like I would think it would at least turn brown at 350, but it didn't. And I tried to make like my caramel sauce still with it, and it seems to have frozen fine. Like you can use it in like your ice creams and stuff like that, but it's not caramel colored. It's just so weird. It kind of tastes caramely, but it's pale. So I wouldn't suggest using Bocha Sweet as something to heat up and make a caramel with. So I would use the Bocha Sweet for buttercreams and icings and to powder things. Those are going to be the best options for that. Now on to allulose, which people constantly are asking for substitutes for allulose and erythritol. Allulose, the things I use allulose for are things that I want either extra moisture in, things that don't have to harden, and things that I need caramelized. So I have been trying forever to make sponge candy out of allulose and it hasn't worked. It's the sweetener that works most like sugar, but doesn't. It's so frustrating because I really want to use it as like in meringues, which I have a marshmallow recipe that's like a marshmallow fluff that I put on top of chocolate to make like a dip for graham crackers. And it works good with that, like making like a cream, but it doesn't stay in the marshmallow and it doesn't, like I can't cook it and it gets hard. It stays soft no matter what. So allulose is frustrating because I wish it would work exactly like it needs to, but it doesn't. So allulose is only 70% as sweet as sugar. Bocha Sweet, I didn't actually check. It must be just as sweet as sugar. I didn't check like the conversions on that. Ugh, my throat's getting dry talking. It caramelizes like sugar, but you have to heat it up way higher than normal sugar, but it doesn't harden until it's almost burnt. I will link up here my praline recipe. That is the only way I've been able to get it to get super crisp. I tried making toffee out of allulose, and with the ratios of a toffee recipe, it does not get hard. So I'm going to keep working on that to make a good toffee recipe, but it's going to be a lot less butter and cream in the recipe to make it a toffee because it doesn't get hard unless it's super high in temperature and there's not a lot of moisture you're putting back into it because allulose stays soft. So that's why I use it in some of my recipes to keep things soft. My brownie recipe, my muffin recipe, And then I use it in custards, things that get cooked. So in my jam, my creme anglaise recipe, my sweet condensed milk, my ice cream, that's what keeps it soft, is the allulose. So you can make my recipe without it and put other stuff in it, but it's not going to stay soft. Even with vodka, with everything, it's not going to stay soft. Now you might be asking, what is allulose? It's only 70% sweet as sugar. It's a monosaccharide that the body doesn't recognize, and it passes right through. It's usually derived from fig, raisins, and jackfruit. So it's a naturally occurring monosaccharide that is processed down from those different fruits into a sweetener that our body just doesn't recognize. So it's really good for keto because it just passes right through. Some people have digestive upset from it, me included. I can't eat too much allulose, but I've heard you can kind of build up a tolerance just because our bodies aren't used to it is why it's doing that. So you can eat a little bit at a time and, kind of work your way up. But if you haven't had it in a really long time, it kind of resets itself, I think. Kind of like inulin. In the UK, people have had inulin in their diets for a long time. So they're used to it because it's a fiber that they use over there very frequently. Here, it's not used as much except for in keto products. So a lot of times it's inulin that causes your upset stomach from prepackaged keto products. But again, you can probably work up a tolerance to it just like allulose. Now, second to last sweetener is xylitol. And I did use this when I first started a little bit, but it's not good to ingest for, I believe it's dogs or cats. I'm sure someone will mention it in the comments. I heard it's really good for your teeth. That's why it's in a lot of toothpaste. It's the same sweetness as sugar. It is a little bit higher on the glycemic index, and it has calories, which most of these other ones do not have calories to them. And xylitol does crystallize when it's heated. But a lot of hard candies are made out of xylitol. There's one that's called like icebreakers or ice candy. It's like a keto peppermint candy, and it's decent. And I have used xylitol to make like a peppermint candy, and it's okay, but I don't like it's not as gritty as an erythritol, but it still has a little bit of grit to it. So I don't prefer it. I still have not found something that doesn't crystallize into hard candy and doesn't spike my blood sugar, except for the allulose when you heat it really, really, really high. It's the only one. And like by that time, it's caramel. There's no making like a peppermint candy out of that because it's already tasting like caramel because it's basically caramelized sugar already. So I haven't found anything that I can make hard candy out of that is good for keto. Xylitol also keeps your ice cream soft. If you want to use that instead of the allulose, that's pretty much the only substitute. But it's higher on the glycemic index and it has calories in it. The last and final one that I have on my list is Isomalt. This isn't really a keto sweetener. I mean, it can be for some, I suppose. It spikes my blood sugar though. And the only reason I knew that was because someone else mentioned it in my video. I have a hot cocoa bomb video where I made peppermint candies. Isomalt is something that is used to make sugar-free suckers. So I thought it was good to go. So I used it and I made peppermint candies and I was super excited. And then my video came out and someone was like, yeah, it spikes mine and my husband's blood sugar. And I'm like, no. So I tested it and sure enough, it spiked my blood sugar too. So it might not be for everybody, but for me and those two people, it did. And so I haven't used it since because I worry that if I tell people that and they don't test themselves, that it will spike their blood sugar. And I don't want to cause anybody to have a problem with their blood sugar because of me. Most of this other stuff that I mentioned doesn't spike most people's blood sugars. Some people have mentioned that allulose does. I don't know how. I'm thinking it might be something else in the recipe or in whatever they're eating that is spiking their blood sugar. I feel like someone said that and then they found out it was something else that was doing it. But yeah, it makes great hard candies. It's only half as sweet as sugar, but unfortunately, I can't use it. And it bummed me out because that's what we use. Isomalt is what you use to make candy sculptures a lot of the times, which is what I kind of went to school because I wanted to do fun stuff like that, like building sculptures out of chocolate and candy and cake and stuff like that. So when I heard Isomalt was sugar-free, I got really excited. And then, yeah, it spiked my blood sugar. So that put a damper on things. Now, that is all the keto sweeteners I know of right now. And I believe it is So Nourished. Has monk fruit and tagliatose and malt extract in it. I had it written down the whole time. But at least their brown sugar does. That's the thing. Brown sugar usually has malt extract, which isn't always gluten-free. So you kind of got to search for it on their websites to see if they are certified gluten-free. But malt technically is not gluten-free. So if you're strictly that and you're having problems, maybe that is it. I don't know. But yeah, I found that out. Because the one bag, the So Nourished brown sugar sweetener that I have, does not say gluten-free on it. I think it says it on the Amazon website though. So can you ever be sure? I don't know. Now I'll pop back up here the chart I found. All the sweeteners that end in tall, like sorbitol, maltitol, I think there's another one. Of course, I can't think of it. But I'll put it up here for you. These are sweeteners that a lot of companies use in their sugar-free candies and snacks and stuff like that. This is what I put away when I see that as one of the ingredients, or I don't eat those, because they're really high on the glycemic index. Same thing with the Isomalt. So I didn't know that until someone else told me. But Isomalt is used in a lot of hard candies that are on the shelf. And they say sugar alcohols on the bottom, but I've been told, I don't remember what videos it was, but you only can subtract like half those sugar alcohols because they do spike your blood sugar. So I usually stay clear of anything that has those ingredients in it, along with all the gluten ingredients, like the low carb tortilla shells and stuff like that. I don't eat any wheat because if you've ever seen Steve's reviews of all those tortilla shells, you know that it can spike your blood sugar still. So I hope this wasn't too long-winded or confusing for you guys. One more thing about allulose. So I use it to keep things soft, but if you use all allulose in baked goods, they will be just a mush mess. They will not get crispy or baked. They will be, allulose holds on to water. So, oh yeah, I was going to mention, so when I mentioned the whole thing about like making it wet with the Bocha sweet in my frosting, I used an allulose monk fruit blend once that was powdered for frosting, and it made my cake wet. Like, I don't know if it pulled all the moisture from the refrigerator or from the cake, but I couldn't eat it. And I was very upset because I love my cake. And my cake was wet. Same thing, like I said, the allulose doesn't stay in my bread if I rise it and don't use some kind of fiber to keep the allulose in the bread loaf. It leaks out. It makes it wet. Like the moisture comes out of the bread. So I've tried it to make macarons. They never harden. They are floppy. Like they do not cook and get crispy. So if you're trying to make a crispy something and you're using allulose, that's why it will not get crispy. And most recipes, if you use all allulose, they'll get really dark really fast and they'll probably be undercooked. So allulose keeps things so soft they usually crumble apart. So allulose is good for some things and not for others, just like all the other sweeteners. So I hope that helped you guys. I hope it wasn't too confusing. I've been talking for a really long time now, and I knew this was going to be a long thing, and I was debating on like splitting it up. But I hope that shed some light on these sweeteners for you so that you can know what you need to use at what point and what recipes and why certain things won't work for you. Let me know if you like this video by giving it a thumbs up. Thank you for subscribing, and as always, I'll be back with more keto videos. Bye guys.